My name is Elise Calder, and at 31 years old I had spent most of my life learning to take up exactly as much space as I was quietly permitted. Then my stepbrother looked across the dinner table and said, "This year we're keeping the trip to blood family, you understand?" Nobody corrected him. Not my stepsister. Not my stepmother. Not my father, who just refilled his water glass and stared at it like it had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the room. I folded my napkin into a neat square, set it beside my plate, and said something about an early morning. I let myself out. I drove home in the kind of silence that isn't peaceful at all. Before I tell you what happened after that, tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. If you've ever felt like a guest in your own family's life, you already know how this particular door sounds when it closes. I was 7 when my mother died. Ovarian cancer, fast and merciless, and then she was just gone. My father held everything together the way people do when they don't have any other choice. We moved twice in 2 years, landed in a smaller house in Columbus, Ohio, and somewhere in the fog of that period, he met my stepmother at a church potluck. She had 2 kids of her own. My stepbrother was 9, a year older than me at the time. My stepsister was 7, same as me. They moved in during the summer before I started 3rd grade. My father sat me down and explained it the way adults explain things to children, gently in short sentences, waiting for me to nod. I nodded. For a while it was the kind of blended family people make movies about. My stepmother braided my stepsister's hair and mine on school mornings. My father taught all 3 of us to make pancakes on Sundays. I told myself it was going to be fine. I told myself that a lot. The distinctions appeared slowly, the way mold does. You don't see it until it's already spread. My stepbrother's little league games were circled on the family calendar in red marker. My academic team competitions never made it onto the calendar at all. When I mentioned it once, my stepmother smiled and said she would try to keep track, and she meant it, I think. She just never did. My father was not a cruel man. He was a distracted one. He loved me in the way people love things they feel slightly guilty about, from a careful distance, with a lot of quiet hoping it would be enough. By high school, the lines were drawn, even if nobody would have admitted it out loud. My stepbrother got a car for his 16th birthday. I got a heartfelt card and a gentle suggestion that I look into after-school jobs, which I did. I babysat, tutored, worked a pharmacy register 2 afternoons a week, and graduated with a GPA that earned me a scholarship to Ohio State. My stepbrother graduated, barely, mostly because my stepmother handled every late assignment personally. I became a physical therapist, built my patient load carefully, earned a specialty certification in orthopedic rehab, and eventually bought into a small group practice with 3 other clinicians. By my late 20s I was seeing 40 patients a week and managing my own schedule. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, and no one had handed me a single piece of it. My stepbrother, meanwhile, was on his 3rd job and 2nd round of legal trouble. That brings me to the first number I need you to hear. When he got a DUI at 26, not his first incident, just the first that required a real attorney, my stepmother called me crying. She framed it the way she always did, not as a request but as a situation she was describing out loud. She described the legal fees. She described how terrible everything was. I filled in the rest myself, like I always did. $16,500. Paid to a defense attorney who got him probation and a suspended license. My stepbrother never paid me back. I never asked him directly, and I told myself it was a one-time thing. 2 years later, my stepmother wanted to renovate the kitchen. By then, my father had bought a lakehouse in rural Indiana. A modest one, a few hours from Columbus, and he had talked me into contributing toward the mortgage. My name was nowhere on the deed, but I had been covering part of the note for 5 years, $2,000 a month, because my father told me it was a family investment, and I wanted to believe that I was family enough for the word to mean something. $62,000 in total by the time of this story. For a lake house I visited once a summer and was expected to feel grateful about. The kitchen renovation. My stepmother called it a loan, $24,000. She wrote me an IOU on the back of an envelope. I kept it in a drawer for 2 years before I stopped opening that drawer at all. My father's health became the 3rd number. He was 61, between insurance policies, because of a clerical error he couldn't seem to get corrected. When he had a cardiac event that required a procedure and 5 days inpatient. I paid $38,000 to keep that bill from going to collections. He told me he would reimburse me when his contracting business stabilized. Stabilized, I came to understand, had become a word with no real timeline attached to it. And then there was my stepsister. Quieter than her brother, more careful. I never blamed her the way I blamed him, because she was mostly compliant rather than actively cruel. She went through a difficult stretch in her late 20s, her marriage wobbling, her income unreliable, and I covered her rent in Cincinnati for 19 months. $19,000. My best friend Portia, who had watched all of this from the outside with the patience of someone who loves you, even when you are being spectacularly unwise, told me once that I was trying to purchase a permanent seat at a table that was never going to offer me one. I told her that wasn't what I was doing. I think I even believed it. The annual 4th of July trip to the lake house had been a fixture for as long as I could remember. 2 weeks in Indiana, boats and fishing and card games that stretched past midnight and family dinners, where everyone got a little loud and a little honest. For 22 years I had packed my bag and made the drive. I had grilled corn on the cob and fished off the dock with my father in the early morning and felt, at least during those 2 weeks, that I was somewhere I was supposed to be. It was April when I brought it up. Sunday pot roast at my stepmother's house, the smell of rosemary and warm bread, the particular late afternoon light coming through the kitchen curtains. I said I was thinking about taking the full 2 weeks this summer, that I could rearrange my patient schedule, that I'd already been looking forward to it. My stepbrother put his fork down. "We're actually keeping it to blood family this year," he said, casual, almost bored, like he was reading a grocery list. "It's been a conversation, nothing personal." I looked at my father. He was looking at his water glass. I looked at my stepmother. She adjusted her napkin and said something quiet that didn't resolve into meaning. My stepsister glanced at her phone. "I've gone every year for 22 years, I said. My voice came out steadier than anything inside me felt. My stepbrother shrugged. "It's not about years. It's just about keeping it to actual family this time. You know how it is." I did not know how it was. I knew how it wasn't. I set my napkin beside my plate, thanked my stepmother for dinner, said something about an early morning. I let myself out. Nobody followed me to the door. Before I'd even made it to my car, I could hear the conversation starting back up behind me. A brief interruption managed and moved past. I don't remember much of the drive home. I remember standing in my kitchen in the dark for a long time without turning on the lights. I remember the specific way the quiet felt. Not empty, but very full of everything I had been not saying for years. I didn't call Portia until 2 in the morning. She picked up without any particular surprise. I told her the whole thing. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I love most about her. Then she said, "Elise, how much money are we actually talking about? Total, have you ever added it all up at once?" I hadn't. I had always kept each thing separate in my mind, filed under its own category, its own justification. I opened my laptop. I pulled up 3 years of statements and then went further back, found records I had kept without ever intending to look at as a whole. By 3 in the morning, I had a number. $174,000. I said it out loud. I said it again. Portia was quiet for a moment on the other end of the line, then she said softly, "You already know what you have to do." I did. I wasn't ready to do it yet, but I did. I slept badly. I went to work and held the whole thing at arm's length for 2 days. Then a text arrived from my stepmother. Breezy in tone, 3 sentences. They were working on trip logistics. Could I cover the usual grocery run and the boat fuel deposit like always? She'd send me a list. She appreciated it. She appreciated it. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and read it twice. Then I typed back 4 words. "Sorry, blood family only." I turned my phone face down and went back inside. By the time I left work that afternoon, I had 11 missed calls. My stepmother had sent 6 texts, escalating from confused to offended to genuinely angry. My father had left 2 voicemails, both of which started with, "Elise, this is getting out of hand." My stepbrother had sent a single text, "Real mature. Call mom." There was no apology anywhere in any of it, not even the shape of one. Over the next few days I met with my attorney. I had kept documentation, not because I anticipated this moment but because I kept everything, a habit from my own lean years when every dollar had to be accounted for. Bank transfer records, the IOU on the envelope, the signed acknowledgement from my stepbrother's attorney, confirming I had covered the retainer. I laid it all across a conference table and watched my attorney's expression shift from professional neutrality to something quieter and colder. "The lakehouse contributions are the most interesting piece," she said. "You may have more standing there than you realize." I told her I wasn't looking for litigation. I told her I just wanted to put reality on paper. She told me documentation was a good start. We talked for 2 hours. On the 4th night, my stepbrother and my father appeared at my apartment door together. I watched them through my father, in his good jacket. My stepbrother, wearing the particular expression of someone who has practiced sincerity in a mirror. And then I let them in. My father went first. He said my stepbrother had misspoken at dinner. He said of course I was part of the family. He said we had always worked things out before. I asked him when exactly my stepbrother had misspoken. Whether it was before or after the entire table went silent. Whether it was before or after, my stepmother texted me asking for the grocery money. My stepbrother's composure cracked first. "You've always done this," he said. "Made everything about whether you belong. Some of us don't have the luxury of turning everything into an identity crisis." "What luxury?" I asked. "I paid $16,000 to keep you out of jail. I've been writing a check toward that lakehouse for 5 years. I paid for your mother's kitchen and your grandfather's hospital bills. Which part of any of that would you describe as a luxury?" He looked at my father. My father looked at the floor. "The business is in trouble," my father said finally, quietly, like something that had been held too long finally being set down. "We've been depending on your help more than we should have admitted. Your stepmother and I. We haven't been honest with you about how bad things have gotten." "I know," I said. But tell me something. When you sat around that table and decided I wasn't blood family, did anyone think about that for a single second? Or did you assume that once I found out I wasn't invited to the trip, I'd just keep sending money anyway? Neither of them answered. The silence was its own answer. I want an apology, I said, a real one, not management. My stepbrother said he was sorry for how the words had come out. I told him that wasn't what I meant. My father said he should have stood up at dinner, and that he was ashamed he hadn't. I told him I believed that part. I asked them both to leave. When my stepbrother tried to circle back to the trip expenses, I walked to my door and held it open. He left without finishing his sentence. My father paused on his way out, and put his hand briefly on my shoulder the way he used to when I was small, and he didn't have the words for something. I didn't move away from it, but I didn't lean into it either. That night I sent a document to all of them. My father, my stepmother, my stepbrother, my stepsister. 11 years of dates, amounts, and the language of every original agreement. I noted that I was removing myself from the lakehouse mortgage contribution immediately, effective that month. I noted that outstanding loans were due within 60 days per the documented terms. I closed with one sentence. I valued my place in this family for a long time and at real cost. I've been given clarity recently that the value was primarily financial. I'm adjusting accordingly. I turned my phone off and sat in my living room in the dark. What I felt wasn't quite peace, but it was the first honest thing I had felt in weeks. The responses arrived over the following days. My stepmother wrote a long message about how I was tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. My stepbrother called me vindictive. My stepsister, who had said almost nothing during the entire episode, sent a carefully worded note that was half apology and half complaint that I had made her position impossible. Not one of them acknowledged the $174,000. My father sent a short text. I love you. I'm sorry I didn't do better. I need some time to think. That one I kept. The extended family heard a very edited version of events, and for several weeks, my phone held messages from people I barely spoke to in normal years. All of them disappointed in me, for abandoning my father over what they'd been told was a misunderstanding. I sent one response to the whole chain. I explained that I had contributed over $174,000 to the family, over 11 years, and that I had been explicitly told the week prior that I was not considered blood family. And that I was simply aligning my financial involvement with that new understanding. I attached the documentation. Then I turned my phone off and sat by my window for a while, feeling something strange move through me. Not peace exactly, but the beginning of it. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Alderman, who had a particular gift for asking questions that made you realize you'd known the answer for years. She told me something that stayed with me. You've been trying to earn permanent residence in a home where you've always been treated as a long-term guest. Grief and loyalty are not the same thing, even when they feel identical. She was right. I had been mourning my mother for 23 years, and trying to replace what I'd lost by buying my way into a family that was never fully mine. The money wasn't generosity, not really. It was rent I'd been paying to feel like I belonged somewhere. I stopped paying it. My aunt, my father's younger sister, who I had always been closer to than anyone on my stepmother's side, called 3 weeks after the dinner. She had only just heard the full story from someone willing to tell it honestly, and she was furious in the quiet, certain way of someone who has thought it through. Your father should have handled this a long time ago, she told me. What they said to you was wrong, period. She asked if she could come visit. I said yes. She drove 4 hours. Her daughter Tamara, my cousin, flew in from Austin just to be there. The three of us made dinner and stayed up past midnight and laughed in a way that felt uncomplicated and real, like something that didn't need to be earned. My aunt told me the July 4th trip happened, sparsely attended. My stepsister's husband hadn't gone. 2 of my stepmother's own siblings hadn't made it. The photos I eventually saw had a particular quality to them, like everyone was performing a good time rather than actually having one. The lakehouse sold 8 months later. My stepbrother had to leave his apartment and move back home. My stepsister called me in the fall with a carefully worded note of apology that I accepted without fully reopening the door. My father made 2 repayments that covered less than 10% of what was outstanding, and then stopped. I never pursued aggressive collection, not because the money didn't matter, but because what I'd needed to prove wasn't something a judge could award me. It was already in the record. It was already true. Portia threw me a birthday party that October, in her backyard with string lights and too much food, and people who had shown up because they wanted to, not because their name happened to be on the same paperwork mine was. My aunt came. Tamara drove up. My colleague Bianca, who had covered my patients during the worst week of all of this, came with her husband. I stood in the middle of all of it and thought, this is what I was looking for. I just spent a very long time looking in the wrong place. I started volunteering Tuesday evenings with a grief support group for children who had lost a parent, a church basement, bad coffee, kids who were trying to figure out how to carry something enormous without falling over. I recognized myself in every single one of them. I tried to say the things I wished someone had said to me. That loss doesn't get smaller, but you get stronger, and that the family you need isn't always the one you were born into or the one that raised you. Sometimes it's the one you build, deliberately, from the people who choose you back. My father called in November. His tone was careful, reaching for something he couldn't quite name. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking. He said he hoped we could find a way forward. He said family was what mattered most. I told him I agreed completely. I told him I was building that now. I told him the door wasn't locked, but that walking through it required him to say something true first. He said he'd think about it. I told him I'd be here. This past 4th of July, Portia and Tamara and 3 other people I genuinely love came to my apartment. We ordered too much food and watched the fireworks from my roof and played cards until 2 in the morning. Nobody was calculating who belonged. Nobody was keeping a quiet record of what had been given and by whom. We were just people who had chosen each other, sitting together in the dark and the noise and the light. Portia asked me at some point if I missed the lakehouse, the early mornings, the water, all of it. I thought about it honestly, the way I've been trying to do everything since that April dinner. I missed the idea of it, I told her. The version where I actually belonged there. But you can't grieve something that was never really yours to begin with. And once you understand that, once you stop trying to hold on to the shape of a thing that was always just a little out of reach, you can finally start building something that actually is. If you've spent years trying to earn a place at a table that keeps moving, just as you get close, I want you to hear this: the effort you made, the money you gave, the times you stayed quiet so someone else could stay comfortable. None of that was proof that you weren't enough. It was proof of how much you wanted to belong. That desire isn't weakness. It's just misdirected love, and it is always, always okay to redirect it. You are allowed to stop funding your own exclusion. You are allowed to build a table of your own, surrounded by people who don't need to be convinced to save you a seat. If something in this story touched something in you, I'd really love to hear it in the comments. Have you ever had to reclaim something you gave away trying to be accepted? Tell me about it. I read every single one. And whatever you're carrying right now, you are not carrying it alone.